Uh-oh.
I deny that remark.
We won't mention any names. Yeah, I always have trouble finding something to no, they're good.
No, I can make them shorter. Takes longer.
It's fine to me, I read through them.
Not a whole lot longer.
Yeah, it does take longer, doesn't it? Okay, so,
As long as we're on that topic, are they consistent with the kinds of notes that other committees generate? And do you ever get any feedback on, gee, we really wish we'd heard more from
well, Allison
Pete on this?
has said several times that she is interested in what the committee does, and usually she streams it. She might look at the minutes, but,
Okay.
So there are those who look at them. I don't know how many. So I only sent them out yesterday. Does anybody have any comments on them?
I can send them out in draft form right after the meeting.
You could do that, and then I could make my comments at the meeting. Do you guys, would you prefer to have those minutes like within days as she does them?
It's whatever's
It
good.
doesn't matter to me, but if that made it easier for anybody to have read them, I'd say go for it.
Yeah. So,
You've done the hard work, which is recording it.
hi, Pearl.
You are not very late.
We're just getting started.
Yes, we are.
Fantastic.
Do you have any comments on the minutes?
No.
All right, great. So I would say go ahead, Sarah, and send out your draft
Oh, okay.
to look at, and I will be one of those folks, and then we can work on them afterwards. I might make, I think I'd add my notes in and make those comments during the meeting, probably.
Okay, or at
You owe
any
me.
time you want me to. I
You
can
owe me
change
for
it
those
before-
numbers, right?
In the interim,
And then send them out again.
yeah.
Okay.
Right before the
All right.
meeting or something. Yep.
Okay. Next committee meeting, I think we're going to run into the same problem
Oh, another
next
holiday.
month with a holiday on the third Monday, which would be, the third Monday is 17th. Let's see what the town calendar says.
That's President's Day.
It is President's Day,
Yep, 17th, yeah.
so it's a holiday, right?
Yes.
So,
Do it again on the 10th?
would you want to do it, now, here, the ticket is that there's going to be a workshop of the select board, and I did not see it scheduled, and they had said at the meeting last week that they wanted
Yeah,
to
I'm
schedule, but
I don't know how we didn't
weren't you trying to nail
schedule.
them down on that?
I don't remember them setting the date, so we'll have to do it at the next meeting.
Oh, so it's not until the end of January? is
Yeah,
when you
because
set
we
it up.
didn't set a date that I
Maybe we
remember.
should put it,
So,
are we doing 10th or 24th?
And I wanted to set it, and I don't know how it got away from us. But that happens sometimes.
oh, yeah, okay. Municipal calendar. So, next month. Oh, they haven't written it in anyway. Let's see, so you're saying the 17th and the 10th would be,
10th or the 24th?
it's a short month
mean-
into March. So maybe it makes more sense to do the 10th because of the short month of February, and that gets us to the third week of March sooner. All right, so 10th for the next meeting? Okay, great.
Done.
So, Brian, let's see, no, let's go to Anna's thought thought. Did you have something you wanted to add? You didn't have anything to add? Okay. All right. You said you were going to leave early, so I didn't.
Yeah, no, I just didn't want to interrupt at that time.
All right. Brian, you said that you attempt to have updated information to the select board before its energy discussions in January.
Right, and
About
I
the snowball A-frame.
Yep, so I rechecked with Peter's help, the baseline data, and it looks like it's still the same as what it looked like what I had originally done the modeling on it. So the projection is still very much the same. The place is continuing to hemorrhage fuel. The unique aspect of it is that, because it involves a food service operation, it includes a fryolator, there's exhaust hoods, and we don't know how long they run for, and at what speed they're activated. So a lot of the heat that's generated, there's 1,000 gallons, over 1,000 gallons of propane, which all goes to running fryolators and stoves and things. Most of that probably gets sucked back out of the building. So it's a little, because it's a commercial kitchen operation, it's a little bit difficult to know how much the building actually uses versus what is put in and what is sucked out.
I can update on some new stuff that's happened, including snowball in these buildings, if this is the time to do it.
Yeah, so long story short, that building, if it continued to be used to heat it at the same temperature that it is, if it were to be insulated, we'd cut the energy use by 50% out
You
there.
still would, even with the exhaust fan?
Yeah, I
Was
mean,
it
you'd still cut the building's demand. It wouldn't cut it from what it is now, because you'd probably take those 1,000 gallons out, but they're still using, I don't know, it's 20 some odd 100 gallons of oil to heat the place. So it's still, even without the propane, it's still an energy hog.
Yeah. So does it seem like, are we going to make a specific recommendation to the select board?
I don't think we need to, because
Yeah,
Let me move it.
I think we're
Segue
going
to Mark, okay.
Okay,
bypass
what's
things in one
happening,
way or the
we've been
other.
talking to a company called Siemens, which is a huge German company.
Yep.
And they have a division that comes in and does energy audits of buildings. And then they will, if I understand this correctly, they will I don't remember, but they will guarantee, they will do all the work, all the energy updates, insulation, stuff like that, and they will then they will guarantee an energy savings, and they will charge, and how they charge it, and we pay them a monthly payment that's less than we've been paying for energy. They guarantee that we will pay less than we've been paying before. And they take care of all the stuff. It's a new modern way they've been doing it. We had talked to them about this building, public safety building. They went over to the Snowball and checked that building as well, because they wanted to see the large corporation, they wanted to see if we had enough business for them to come into town. And so they added the Snowball into the equation. And it looks like they don't have reports yet back, but they've included the Snowball as part of that whole thing. where
With
they
the
will-
Opera House and the Public Safety Building?
They will come in and do energy savings in all three buildings, guarantee the energy savings, and we will pay a certain percentage less than we've been paying for energy, electric bills or something. I'm not real clear on the economics.
There's something about 90% of their anticipated savings
Right,
that we would not end up paying more than,
Yeah,
I'm
the question I have for you, Mark, and just going forward, I know you don't have an answer, but the question that I would be asking if I was on the select board is, okay, great, you're going to guarantee that we're going to save money, and that's all well and good, but
No, And save energy.
and save energy.
Because if
Yeah.
we don't save the energy,
No, understood. But knowing how corporations work, they're going to, I mean, you're going to say, you're going to save money and energy every month, but that money is going to go, in other words, say you save 10%. Over what you were spending before.
we shouldn't even put figures in because I don't remember what the figures are.
I guess the thing that I would be concerned about is the longevity of the money that you're paying to this corporation for a one-time service of figuring out what to do. You see what I'm saying?
It
ought not to be.
It ought not to be forever. It ought to be some sort of a short-term.
And I can't even speak to that because I'm not.
Yeah, but
really
do you see
clear.
how that would be a really
No,
important
I'm
question to
clear.
answer?
But I believe there is, it's not, I can't even comment on it because
Okay.
I'm not clear on.
Good enough, but just keep that in mind.
But basically, what you should take away from this is we're talking to somebody about energy savings here, public safety building, and now the snowball.
Yeah, good.
And this company does auditing and also
They do all the,
installation work.
they do all the things, like, one of the things may be changing out the boiler here. I mean, they do tremendous amounts of work in not having an oil-fired boiler. Those are some of the things that they look at. But I can't, it's too early in the deal to know, but it could be a really good thing. But what it means is we are looking at finally dealing with that A-frame and saving the energy, which, as Brian has been telling us for years, is just, might as well open all the windows and put blowers and blow the heat out of the building.
Well, I think it's even though it may not really ultimately be financially the best way to go, if nothing else, it's like, here it is, there's going to be soup to nuts, it'll at least be done.
From what I understand, we looked at putting in heat pumps and such at the public safety building, and this is less expensive than that long-term as well. But
We'll find out when we get the reports.
Well, there's a lot more that we need to go through before we know. I'm just telling you that we are looking at the snowball now in terms of
Good.
solving that problem as best we can.
Can I ask just, is this a redo or an extension of a prior report, or is it something that hadn't been done before?
This is brand new, all brand new.
All these buildings have had
They have
reports
had
before.
Kind of analysis.
Yes,
Yeah.
This is just more of an.
a decade ago.
Okay, great.
It's all brand new. They were here, Siemens was here, I believe, last week, looking at all the buildings.
Yeah, so it'll be great to, to see what they can come up with. I think ultimately the question for the select board will be, there's different ways to make that investment in getting that return, with the return being the savings of energy and the savings of money. And in this way, the town doesn't have to lay anything out, but given the current climate of interest rates and things like that, there's nothing to say that the town couldn't or wouldn't want to see what are the alternatives, because it's often, we make these decisions compared to what.
We had done that with other companies at the safety building, and then Siemens came in and said, here's an alternative. So no
Okay.
decisions have been made. We already.
So you have that at the safety.
Yeah,
building.
we've already
Yeah, that's great.
done that, so we can compare the numbers, but I'm just telling you, it's a process that has just started, and it now includes the snowball.
That's great. I'm really delighted that, I think it's a very sensible and, dare I say, imaginative approach is to really have an expert organization come in,
Yeah.
know what they're doing, look at the buildings, and I'm very pleased to see those buildings
Now,
being
just
addressed.
so I understand for the minutes, I'm not questioning this personally. Has the town signed anything with, you're just talking
No,
to them?
and I would not put in any figures in terms of.
I have not put down
no
any
figures,
figures.
it's just that.
No figures.
they're coming-
Can she mention Siemens?
I would.
It's on the all they have to do is check into
Yeah.
either the,
We didn't, they've been looking at, it's an alternative to what we've been looking at. They've looked at the three 3 buildings, and we'll see what we get back from that.
Excellent. So, thank you.
Just to piggyback on that briefly, is whenever you have these conversations about, doing this, saving money, be sure to remind everybody that that we are signatories of the Compact of Mayors, and we're likely going to be this year. And Pearl, maybe you could give us a report. You had your first class today?
Did, and I met with Janet prior to that.
Yeah. So we could hear about that. But the idea that we really do need to start putting that framework into everything we do so that people start to understand what's going on.
That's a good segue. If you would like to move on to discussing the request that the Energy Committee will be making of the Select Board to incorporate, basically to, in their new buildings, that it be zero net energy. So that document's been worked on a little bit, and there are some questions it brought up that I think would be just good to discuss as a committee. Is it all right if I read the status of the document as it is? It's basically 2 paragraphs. The first paragraph is saying, hey, we signed the Global Covenant. We're trying to do something here. And the second paragraph is what we're asking of the town. And after that, some questions came up and some items for discussion came up. You had to look at that after I worked on it,
Yeah,
didn't you?
I worked on it.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. So thank you for those who had a look at it and added to it, and thank you to Pete for getting us rolling on this. It's been great. Okay, so I'll read this to you as it stands now. This is a Google Doc that's been shared with everybody, so you can get on and look at it and make comments and everything else. The town of Camden was the first municipality in the state of Maine to join the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, a global coalition of city leaders addressing climate change by pledging to set clear public goals for cutting greenhouse gas emissions and preparing for the future impacts of climate change. Camden is now in the 3rd year of the 3-year planning process for adopting carbon emission reduction goals. The goals will require substantial reduction in the town's current carbon footprint. Did you take out the asterisk?
No, it's down there.
I put an asterisk separately in a different place. That's what I did. Okay, sorry. I need to move the asterisk for carbon footprint to that spot.
Okay.
So there's an asterisk that says carbon footprint, that emission of carbon compounds due to the consumption of fossil fuels by a particular entity. Such compounds contribute to anthropogenic global warming. Okay. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, now I have to find my spot. Carbon footprint. Okay. That's the first paragraph. In this context, the Energy and Sustainability Committee makes the following recommendation: that the town of Camden, when planning for and constructing new buildings or other improvements that are or are expected to be town administered and or town owned, and which normally require energy for ongoing use, design and build each to operate with no carbon footprint. This can be accomplished by achieving low demand for energy and or increasing sustainable energy production, parens, solar, wind, etc., end parens, to offset the new energy requirements. Every effort should be made to ensure that new buildings' demands for energy are low by requiring the incorporation of current modern building science in air sealing, insulation, ventilation, and glazing, period. That's the end of it at this point. So
one of the questions was, should we include a passive house? Should Energy Committee recommends that we adopt passive house standards for all, or something? There really isn't much else that I could.
So
So that's one question that I have.
So I think that's a very good question, because we want to know whether, like we chose the Global Covenant of Mayors as sort of an umbrella, understandable entity that we can kind of match to. The question is whether we want to state a standard, which is how it was originally written. We weren't sure what standard that would be, because that was sort of a blank. And as I was looking over it, I was thinking, well, we just say what we want, and that's the standard, but then maybe it's not the standard. So, for instance, and Brian can help us with this one, if the town comes back and says, well, we're meeting the energy requirements of the existing building code for this new building, which does have substantial energy-saving requirements.
Well, it has not substantial.
Just a minute, yes. Our latest code does, however, that's not what we have in mind. Does the statement zero net energy cover the higher standard that we're trying to set?
Not necessarily. You can be zero net energy by just putting a whole lot of solar. You could put solar on a chicken coop enough, you could have a heated chicken coop that's uninsulated and have plenty of solar and have it be considered net zero. So net zero is a
Well,
adding and
if it's heated by
subtracting.
solar, that's not a problem, right? But if it's heated by propane or something, and
Well,
we're
it is a-
offsetting with kilowatt hours, is that what you're saying? We're heated with electricity and offset by,
So
offset the
it is a problem, because if you had to put an acre of solar up to heat one building versus building an efficient building and needing 1/10 of an acre of solar, it would be incredibly energy wasteful from an inputs standard. Net zero means the amount of energy that the building demands is what the building is, that you're also supplying.
Right.
So, but it doesn't, it could be, the demand could be really high and the supply could be high, or the demand could be low. It doesn't look at that.
so
Passive house looks primarily at how much demand. So it says it's got to be super,
Demand
super low
size.
demand. So the difficulty is there isn't really a definition that's out there that does perhaps what we're looking for, which is, it doesn't, in my opinion, and I'm in this business, it doesn't have to be passive. It could be near passive.
Yeah.
It could
Right,
be
but how do you-
twice, no more than twice the passive.
how do you set a standard by which a municipality can follow if we can't be, for instance, okay, if that's the case, and if there's probably a standard about amount of air allowed to exchange or something that Passive House has, right? And if you have a ski lodge, it's never going to meet that. I don't see how it could meet that unless.
Yeah, no, the way you,
Lots
no,
or
but
something.
the way that it meets it is, basically what you're doing is you're saying, we're going to test it under ideal conditions. And that's how it meets the
But it's a
standard.
joke because people are coming in and out and in and out and in and out. And
Well,
and
it's not a
very cold
joke,
outside.
it's,
You do the best you can.
Yeah.
Because it has to function as it is intended, which
So-
is for people to come in and out of.
So our biggest challenge is try to figure out how to massage the words to say something that makes sense and that's realistic.
Right. So I think there can be two things. One can be, call it near passive house. So no more than, say, twice the energy usage of a passive house. So you don't have to be passive, because that last few percent can
Right.
get very expensive
Said that, but
and cost ineffective. And it needs to be that and net zero.
well, I think what we need is,
All the
what we
bases.
need is a little bit more work looking into, and I didn't do this, but we need, well, just what standards exist, like around the world.
So-
What are the Europeans doing for their municipal,
Well,
because there's.
commercial buildings.
I think Boston or somewhere, I saw this, I'll try to find them again for you if you want.
Yeah, if we could, if everybody can do a little crowdsourcing, like just
Boston
spend,
has some new standards they adopted for exactly this, for new buildings, new
so what I would suggest is, without spending more time on this, is that if everybody spends 10, 15 minutes just Googling around, and then just putting the resources in as comments to this particular document, that would be, I think, quite
It is
helpful.
helpful. I found that the resources that many of you have been sending around have been very helpful. It can be challenging to receive links and find out that it's a substantial document and wanting to read it and not finding the time, blah, blah, blah.
But if we put it in this particular document, the links, then it'll be easier to
It's
get.
fine, but is there any way that, that instead of finding a great resource and passing the link off so that everybody has to do the homework of reading the whole thing, wouldn't it be better to summarize it for the entire committee?
You don't have to. You can say, see pages
Yeah.
15 to 17.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I agree with you. You don't want to just give them the thing to a 60-page document and say, here, this had something useful I saw somewhere. I mean, but asking people to paraphrase, which they may not do all that precisely or correctly, I don't think, but if there's just, you know, one section.
Yeah,
just
see
give the
pages
page
X
number.
to Y.
I mean, if it's really long, maybe that won't work, but most of the time it will work.
Well,
You just say,
in-
paragraph 3, page 17.
In this particular case, where we're looking for what action, how specific can we get, or how clear, shall I say, can we get regarding what we're asking? So if you're finding, I think the idea of looking to Europe is great, because European cities and countries are really leading the way this way. So if you find a document or a description, why not just cut and paste and create a Word document that just has the relevant paragraph?
Don't create a
and the
Word
link?
document, create a Google document
Do
that we
not
can
create a
edit.
Google document. There is no reason we have to do everything on Google.
Well, if we're going to collaborate, yes, we do.
Yeah.
Comments, yeah. I have
Really
two,
don't like them. There's no track, there's no.
Of course there is a track.
Well,
The
sort of.
total
but it's
track.
not- And, well, I don't know. We shouldn't
I
fight
have
over
two,
it.
okay, I have two thoughts and a comment. I like the idea of crowdsourcing, and maybe we can all do a bit of research as to
Yeah.
what other standards are out there, so we can be explicit in this, either holding the town to a standard that exists, or I like Brian's idea of, or a percentage off of a standard that exists. So we could do that research and add those links and brief summaries in the comments section, so then the document doesn't get messy.
Yeah.
But those ideas, and we could all do that. I do have one, a question and one.
No, I would like to, I would really like the link, okay?
Can you let
you
Nana
can
finish?
In the-
All these other
in the
things too,
comments,
but
sure.
I'd like
Add the
to
link.
have
Yeah,
links.
you can add the
Yeah.
link in comments.
So
That's
I'll recognize
doable.
you when she's finished with her thought, okay?
There's some passion around Google Docs, I understand.
I don't know. Stupid of me. but
I have
that's how
one
I feel.
more comment, and this could be sorted out in Google Docs as well. But there's one thing in here that strikes me semantically as being not exactly what we mean. So this can be accomplished by achieving low demand for energy and/or increasing sustainable energy production to offset the new energy requirements. Don't we want to say to meet the new energy requirements and
Yeah, I
or
think that-
offset? Because offsetting can be
Right.
it can mean different things to different people, and often an offset could be purchasing an offset over here
Yeah.
that has nothing to do with the direct energy,
And I
meeting
think
the
you have a
energy
comment
need.
in there already that I didn't
Yeah,
delete,
so,
right?
so that's just one thing to me. I think that could be very simply changed by to meet the new energy
Yeah.
production and/or offset, because then that covers, I think that's just more of what we mean, to only use
But we can
offset.
also say something like minimize
Yeah.
demand
Misleading.
at, prioritize minimizing demand over, what's the word, production of,
I think we could simply say
Renewable
increasing production to meet the new energy.
I mean, I
Meet-
have to
to
say,
meet
I don't know how many of
new
you
energy
listened or
requirements.
you were, that discussion the other evening at the select board, but Audra had a very strong statement about the problem with, RECs and offsets. I mean, it was like, they would have built this thing anyway. So we buy these RECs and it actually doesn't increase the amount of of sustainable energy, because that's for a wind farm they would have built
So
anyway.
this was I was so dismayed to learn that the recs for our solar array were sold.
Yeah,
It's
well, we knew
true?
that.
We knew that.
Okay, I guess I kind of missed
Tried
it.
to.
And you can't duplicate them.
I think that it was, honestly, I think that was probably the only way that it would have happened because for a first dip toe in the water, the way the climate was 2 years ago, that really for most people, this was about, oh, look how much money we save. And selling those RECs was part of that. And so now I think that climate has changed quite a bit. So if we propose the next one, I think we could say,
You're speaking of political climate, not the.
political
not
climate.
So much the.
Not
was
the
difficult
long-term
at the
weather.
we're in a completely different universe of possibilities now than we were at that initially.
For those, I would, I told the board at the time, I would prefer for the town to go out, spend the money and buy their own solar thing and keep it in-house and own it and keep. That's, I think, the most effective way. It will save money and will also save energy. I don't like buying RECs because, like Anna said, you can
Right, and
read the stuff you wrote about it. You can, there's people in Texas that are, they have so much extra stuff that you can sell it, but people buy it so they can fly their private plane somewhere and feel good about it.
One thought about the difference between purchasing RECs and selling RECs. As a financial instrument, RECs are really supposed to be used to support the development of renewable projects that would not have otherwise been built. So in the case of the solar array, the fact that RECs were sold to support that development is actually what they're intended to be
Yeah.
used for. So I don't think we should lament too much the fact that the town sold RECs. I think the energy should be put on the town purchasing RECs elsewhere and from wind farms and, nuclear or whatever, just to offset.
The one thing I'll
Future
add
energy
is, I did
needs.
talk to Maria Libby about what the school system is doing, and she said they're making a partnership with this farm that's supposed to be built, and she said their RECs will not be sold, they will be retired as they earn them. So
Is that, how far along is that project?
I can't tell you that. They're working on it. I believe they've signed contracts, but I don't know. And
Is that, is
Somebody
that
else-
reality? Is that pending reality?
yes.
Okay, it is, so,
And somebody else was going to join into it as well. I just heard recently, and I can't remember who that was.
It strikes me as there's a lot of effort and it's not coordinated. So the school board is, looking at it, the town is looking at it. How can we,
the town and the school board hopefully are looking together at
well,
things.
that's a,
The school board went out and did their own thing. We had talked to them about doing it together, and then they went out and did their own thing and didn't tell us.
And they didn't tell you.
really
It was a surprise to us
unfortunate.
because we thought we were working together on something.
That's my question.
They're separate from us. They have their full ability to go out and do something on their own.
I know, but it seems like if they're already doing it, it's still not too late to potentially have the town piggyback.
But I don't want to do what they're doing. I want to own, because they're going through another company that's buying it, and they're doing a PPA kind of a deal. I want to own.
Right, and they're doing a 20-year
Well, and that's,
PPA, right?
this Siemens thing is analogous. That's us not owning it.
Yeah.
That's a PPA.
Again, it is, but I can't.
And it may be a great first step, or it may be a necessary step, but I just want to make sure that we all understand the analog, that it's analogous.
But that will get these buildings more efficient, probably quicker than any other way we can do it right now.
Well, and I think that the same may go for the solar also, in the sense that we could, if we own it and we have to find the property and build it, and that's going to delay things way more than just saying, okay, we're going to enter into a PPA with you. You have this, 50-acre site in Warren. We'll be one of your, co-owners or whatever it is, however that's structured. But I would hope that you could keep an open mind as to what gets done fastest. I think is, and this brings up another point where there's going to be some sort of decision have to be made because there are these, as Audra said, there are these 5 different alternatives, right? In principle. And so one of the things that I had thought about and, Bob had picked up on in my conversation, and this is something that I would propose that we work on, is developing some sort of a matrix, decision matrix for the town to to come up with weights for various factors. In other words, how much is cost? Like, how much do you want to weigh cost as a factor? How much do you want to weigh local control? How much do you want to weigh, the fact that it's, sited inside the town boundary? How much do you want to weigh? Whatever these, I think it would be good to come up with some, first of all, like, what are all the factors that should be weighed, and then come up with some proposed weight for all those factors a priori, because we don't want to wait till you've got these different, you're comparing these things and you don't have any objective framework by which
How are we
to.
going to get priorities? How are we going to, are we telling the select board how to weigh money expenditure versus?
I think what at the very least what we should be doing is proposing what are the categories.
Matrix and
Provide the matrix, and then even provide proposed weightings, and then that. But I think the key thing is that.
Your class. I mean, that's so right down the alley of what you're talking about. Your climate change.
No, they're going to be.
Watershed
I was going to
is.
say, they're going to be pretty busy
Yeah.
with that.
I don't know whether that sort of fits in with what you're doing anyway, or whether that's taking you on a digression.
I don't think it would take a long time to make up a matrix. I mean, I think really, again, a little bit of a crowdsourced document where we say, okay, what are categories that would be useful in the matrix?
If I could add, I know
Yeah.
in my work in the Superfund program, we had a matrix of criteria that were used in decision-making.
Yeah.
There's the couple of factors that were always important, threshold criteria. Then
Yeah.
there were some modifying, and then there were some balancing criteria.
I think you've just got yourself a job here.
Yeah, I guess I would contribute the experience.
Yeah.
One of the things that we didn't do was to establish numerical weightings for the different factors, because
Yeah.
at every site there's a different blend of factors important to the community and the state, and
Yeah.
the legality of taking actions.
Right, but since we are the municipality, I think it would potentially be easier to start thinking about those weightings, and that could be, through discussion, through public, outreach, discourse, like what's important to Camden voters? What are the important things? Is it like at all costs we want our energy from the sun as fast as possible and we don't care how much we pay? Is it something else, or what is it?
But, I mean, you don't have to assign a number.
No.
You just, sort of important, very important,
would
not
be-
important at all. I don't know, that kind
Sure, you could have category of importance.
Well, we would go through and you'd have to talk about each of these factors as it pertained to the decision that was in front of you, and their options, and, it was complicated in
Mark,
some
do you think
cases.
that this is, that the weighting of the factors is something the select board should do, not the energy committee? Or do you think the energy committee should come up with a suggested matrix and then the select board?
Nobody is on the select board is going to come up with the matrix,
That's what Bob said. He says, can you get me what you're,
Nobody
something
has the
that you.
time to
Right.
do the research and stuff like that. And let me just add one thing. One of the reasons I'd like to do it where we own it is because then there is a tremendous savings involved. We pay less for the energy. And then what I want to do is produce enough so that we can find a way to supply energy to all those people in this town that have leaky houses and are using oil heat, and really work on the whole town, not just the municipality.
Yeah.
And having the money savings to do that, to, do a Camden efficiency is where that would contribute to that. I want to do more than just these buildings. because that doesn't solve anything.
Right.
The one thing that came out of the study that Watershed did is most of the energy comes from all the old houses in this town. And that's what we need to work on beyond just doing these buildings. And so we need to look bigger than just, yes, we can join in a farm and we'll pay a little bit less and we'll just go on smoothly after that. But
Let
that
me,
doesn't get
I'll
us
call
to
you
the
back
next
in
step.
about half an hour, 45 minutes.
You're saying whatever we come up with should be transferable to the non-government?
I would like to find a way
Energy.
to supply to the citizens of the town as well,
Yeah.
so that we can assist with their heating, air conditioning, whatever electricity situation. And, you know, the study, you weren't here, but the first watershed study, the most of the energy lost in town was through all those 1,800, 1,700 buildings that are just leaky as they can be, and you heat them, and the energy, it makes the snowball look efficient.
You know roughly what percent of energy, if you looked at both the public sector and the residential, commercial?
I think that came out in the report.
It's on the, if you just Google it.
70+%
Yeah,
comes
you
from
get,
home
you,
heating.
if you just Google 2015 watershed energy Camden, you'll get the PDF.
So, in other words, I hear what you're saying.
You're
but
saying
if-
Watershed's report says what the total municipality uses?
Yeah, it
that
says
first one
everything.
did, yeah.
It
It
says,
was the 2015
Yeah.
is the one we want, okay.
and then the last year's has the larger picture of sectors. That's the whole town, not just the municipality.
So basically,
So the 2015 is the municipality, the 2018 is the, correct me if I'm wrong,
What about that sea
We
level
did
rise report?
2019.
2019's report is basically the entire town, not just the
No,
municipality.
2019 is vulnerability.
What about the sea rise? Which one is the sea rise?
That's a while ago.
So it was 2018 was the, 2018 was the inventory, correct.
Was of everything,
Of
not
the
just
town's inventory,
municipal.
not just
What-
municipal,
What
yeah.
Mark is asking for.
Yeah.
so if the matrix shows that if we buy into the farm, and after 1 year, we save, say, 25% of the energy, of the whole energy for the town, but if we do it the other way, in 2 years, takes 2 years, and we save 100%, and we also save $3 million. It may take a year longer, but it's much more efficient, saves a lot more, and does a lot more to where we're going. That's what like to be able to say in the matrix, to go, here's the different ways we can go.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of ways to make the matrix, but somebody's got to volunteer to like step up to the plate and get started on it.
I'd be happy in a crowdsourcing, there's a matrix that I've used many times. This is a very simple, like,
Good.
Wharton matrix for choosing your next job based on, you put factors in, you weight each factor, and it's different for every person. Or if it's just, if we just need an actual template to start filling things in,
what
I'd
a
be
matrix
happy
is.
to share
Good
that as a
start.
Google sheet.
Yeah, that's a good start.
Bruce, did
Yeah,
you?
you just mean the structure. It wouldn't have.
Just the
any-
structure, purely the structure that
And
anyone
you
can play
have
around with
some-
the weightings.
Bruce, some
Yes,
words to put in it, do you?
yes.
Well, yeah, I can share the matrices that we put together routinely, and I think some of it is very relevant, some of it isn't, but strike some
Do you
as
think
some,
that,
right?
do the two of you feel like maybe you could put your heads together about creating something that we can start working on, or?
Yeah, at least the template, and then we can discuss what
And
what
Bruce,
factors to fill in
You could
altogether.
start filling it in.
Yeah, sure. One other question in the spirit of crowdsourcing before I leave, this document that we're working on, the recommendation to the select board, when do we want to submit it?
This one about the
About the building,
the
new
buildings.
buildings.
That's a good question, and the question I have is, if it's not, if there's no danger that this building is going to get built soon on the Snow Bowl, I would say that it probably makes sense to delay it until after the third year discussion and, you know, the adoption of targets for the town through the compact of mayors, because then what it is it's like, okay, you've adopted these goals.
Let's go, ready, set,
Let's go. Here we go. Now we're doing it, and now this is one way to make sure we're going to do it.
Okay, another possibility would be to, all this is a letter to the select board, right?
Yes.
Discussion, and they're going to have an energy discussion soon, a workshop, sometime after the next select board meeting, is that correct?
I guess so. 'cause
Okay.
we
So,
schedule it.
is there anything really wrong with presenting the document as far as we take it, so that they have something they can look at and go, oh, this is coming down the pike? Really, it's not, it's,
You could
They're not
word
gonna vote on it.
In a way that it is, you could word that first paragraph so that
In light of.
light of, or
Yeah.
inclusive of, or in alignment with
Yeah.
the targets
Okay.
to be set by,
Okay, that would make it work.
then it makes sense to send it to them before that energy meeting.
Because, again, even if the document serves only one purpose, which is to go, wait, what? We have to make targets? That would be useful.
alignment to the targets.
Alignment with.
The upcoming targets, or the soon-to-be
To be announced.
announced, the soon-to-be
Okay, so.
debated and announced.
Does anybody, do you folks agree that it would be a good idea to have them look at this letter as best as we can make it in time for their workshop discussion, so that they can kind of see that these are some of the things they're going to have to be thinking about, and there might be some decisions being made at this time that we don't even know about regarding what's the town is building or planning to build.
Good idea at that workshop to have something in front of us that reminds us of everything we need to consider.
I would rather,
Okay.
sooner rather than later. Thank you, Anna, for having.
All right, I'll work on it
Yeah,
a bit
good.
more.
So to follow up on that, do we have, so we have an action item for the matrix. So if I can go back to the document that we were working on, there were some other elements that I wanted to bring up for discussion. But first I'll add that one option to be helpful to the select board in understanding what we're asking, in addition to this passive house question, which we haven't really resolved, is to add examples of some things that they may not be thinking about. So when it's saying a new construction, that new construction might be a new ski hill at the ski resort that's going to be lit at night. Well, bingo, you've got these huge lights, and that's an ongoing energy use. So maybe that's something that would fall under this.
I think we should keep it real simple and not provide examples, because I think then you, like, really all you want to do is say, hey, guys, if you, next time we build a building, it's got to be at some
Okay,
standard.
but it's not very often that the town builds a building.
Well, I mean, let's be honest, this document it gives the select board some teeth to say to whoever it is that's pushing for the lodge, to say, sorry, we have to do it this way. And I don't think there's any other purpose for this in the near term. And so I think really this should be real simple. And then it gets, it will fold into the Global Council of Mayor targets.
Does anyone else have thoughts about examples like a new ski slope that's being lit, or lighting a park, or something?
Is anybody proposing any of those things? Just
It doesn't matter. I thought this was a sort of a more general statement that we were trying to come up with. And helps us think about what we're really talking about, because when you think about it, new buildings are pretty rare. And now we've got a wastewater treatment plant, whole major installation. And does that qualify because it's actually a Camden Rockport building?
So,
No, I think I agree with,
yeah, I think it's,
Whom?
go ahead.
no, it's okay, go ahead.
Wouldn't it?
I just said I think I agree with Pete.
Yeah, and
That
I-
simple is best.
I do as well. I think, I agree with Pete in that what we want to do is we just want this very global statement that is, whatever we do, if it's going to increase the energy use, it's not to say that someone can't propose or do something, but there's going to need to then be found an offset somewhere else, because we can't, we're limited, we're bound by this commitment. And that's the idea. So everything that we do goes through that lens of Global Covenant of Mayors. That's the goal.
Right.
Right,
of
and
this.
that's something that,
So-
that no one, I mean, besides Mark on the select board really understands that yet.
And so when we're setting the goals for the town, all these other examples will be coming into
Yeah, but that's right, and those other examples.
Those goals,
into
not
the
necessarily this particular
Exactly, I agree.
I would also say, though, that in line with what Mark was saying, and which I agree with about offsets, I would take it further than Anna says we should put either create energy and/or offsets. I would just say create energy and leave out offsets.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
That's kind of a big deal.
It's not real, I mean, we're not talking about offsets as in, no, I don't think that those, in my wording to offset, I'm going to just change that because that has a connotation that we have no interest in even bringing up.
Sarah, what do you think of this? Because the way that was changed based on what Anna was saying, or I think Anna was saying, this can be accomplished by achieving low demand for energy and/or increasing sustainable energy production, solar, wind, et cetera, to meet
Yeah,
new energy requirements.
Yeah.
Does that satisfy your concerns, Sarah?
It was a line that specifically said the word offset.
yeah, well, we took that
We
out.
took the offset out and put meet
If you
instead.
just take it out altogether.
Yeah.
She was using an and/or.
No, I'd say we take it out.
Okay.
I would agree
That's
with
what
that as
I
well.
think.
Get it, clear it up, make it crystal
Simple.
clear.
The other questions that I was wondering if you'd want to talk about is whether we would address in this, as I mentioned before, the objection that we are building to code requirements, that's good enough. So that will be covered by some standard. We're still needing to come up with
We
this
need to,
passive house research.
that's where the crowdsourcing research,
Okay.
we discussed that.
Another one would be whether this relates at all to renovations, updating, HVAC replacements, window replacements, things like that, which is more likely to be the types of things that the municipality does.
Well, I think that's already being taken care of with this, we're already, like, that's what this whole Siemens thing is all about. So, I mean, I think we want it just to be pretty clean and crisp, that new construction needs to meet, very high standards, and leave it at that, because I think it should be very narrow
Right.
and say, look, here's something that you need to understand about new construction. It can't be
We
crap.
can't do stupid anymore.
Yeah.
Is kind of the way we say it in my industry. It's just, we know better. We can't allow that to occur.
Exactly.
At some point, I think we're going to need to tackle that other, it's the whale in the barrel, which is the existing housing stock.
There's a lot.
But that's
Completely different.
something it's something completely different. It's another species.
When we talk about, again, I guess, first of all, I want to know, I guess I'm having this little bit of a struggle in my own mind about how we're looking at this document that we're crafting, whether it's something that we're trying to make into sort of an official adopted code, or whether we're just saying, hey, heads up, and, pending setting goals later.
I think this is really a stopgap.
Better.
Just basically, to me, this is a stopgap for any discussions about the Snow Bowl, where we make the recommendation that this become a town policy. The town says, oh, God, yeah, that's a good idea. That'll slow that whole thing down, or at least,
They have come to us, they were supposed to be at the last meeting, they weren't. They're coming to us going, come on, let's move on this
Yeah, okay.
lodge. We need, it'd be nice to have some backup information.
yeah.
They
So,
being,
The Ragged Mountain Foundation.
so I think if the town said, sure, we're happy for you to build it, but it has to do this.
Well, we're not happy for them to build it
Well,
in that sense.
you
yeah.
see what I'm
There's
saying?
much, the energy part you're taking care of, there's way more pieces.
Absolutely.
Than just the
Good.
energy.
You know, if it were to be approved, it would need to fit through this, you know, opening, which is ultra-low energy. And that's, you know, that's not unreasonable, because it's something that we're applying globally. And I do, to Peter's point as well, I do think that the horse isn't completely out of the barn with the wastewater treatment, but that does impact the municipal energy use. We don't know. Presumably, that
it does.
facility will be more efficient at processing sewage than the old one was, because it's going to be updated, and we've reduced the amount of fluids that are flowing in, because we've stopped however many drains coming out of people's basements and all of these things. So it's all actually, we're doing the things that are heading us in the right direction.
Yes.
Is it enough in the right direction? I don't know, but at least we're thinking about it.
Another comment that I also want to cover, I know we're talking about new buildings, but the way that it's presently phrased, and after this discussion, if each of you can go on to that document and just look at it and see, try to think of other ways that it might be looked at or something, because right now, with the phraseology, design and build each of the new buildings to operate with no carbon footprint. All of a sudden, I'm thinking, like, what about mowing the lawn? What about receiving deliveries? What about, what defines the carbon footprint of that building?
Point taken. Well, let's keep thinking about it.
Okay, great.
I would love to hear before we adjourn what's going on with the watershed, and how we can support that.
Yes.
Yes.
And I have a report also from Jeremy. Let's see. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm, climate change class started today. Obviously, it was very introductory, but I met with Janet about a week ago to talk about what the course was going to look like, what support we needed from the town, and such.
Was Allison there?
No, but Janet did meet with Allison last week as well. So basically just an overview of that is that we are going straight into the project. So it's going to be the full semester. And we talked a lot about how we want to make sure that the town is on board with everything we do. So Janet was talking about wanting monthly meetings with either the Energy Committee or the Select Board or both. Probably representatives from both parties would be great.
That would be, what about Jeremy? And would it be meetings with Jeremy, meetings with the Select Board, or meetings with the Energy Committee, or do we really have the power to make decisions for the Select Board? I mean, from your perspective, do you think the best entity for her to meet with would be? Her, meaning your group.
You should be talking directly to the select board, because no, you don't have the power to make decisions for us. You're an advisory committee, as all the committees in town are. Jeremy is a really good person to make sure he's involved with, so we need to set up, but, maybe myself and Allison or Bob and myself and Jeremy and, at some point, all of the key people should be aware of what's going on. There needs to be direct, because otherwise you're just off in a corner and we're not aware of it.
So what about if should she
Yeah,
be put on the agenda or put in a comment session of the select board meeting?
Well, let me just continue before we go off on there. So the reason that the Energy Committee needs to be involved is because there is, Janet and I talked about how there is a lot of skill in this committee that is not being used at all. And, you know, this project that we're doing is like the biggest deal of the whole thing, the whole project with the covenant. So we are going to need a lot of help because we are 10 kids. The majority of us don't have any experience with this kind of thing. There are 3 students who completed the project last year, and we're the only ones who know what we're doing going forward. So that's why we want the Energy Committee to be involved, because we can't handle all of this work. This is a huge project this year. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we kind of had this happen last year, but we'd want for select board members to come and meet with us regularly on our time. So again, we had Allison come quite regularly last year, but we'd like maybe like a set time each month, or maybe even more frequent than that to check in. And that's why Janet has kind of been going around to select board members and asking how that would work. So there's that. So I think that if we could start thinking about how we want to kick that off, that would be great. If we want to have a first meeting at some point in the future, even if it was just, you know, bringing Janet to one of these monthly meetings, that would be great, just so that, you know, I'm not totally clear on all of the details of how she wants this communication to work, but she is. So definitely we should start some direct communication with her.
Can we invite her to the next meeting for one thing?
Yeah, definitely.
So,
It'd be good if she came to a select board meeting and laid out exactly what she needs so we can all hear it instead of, I have no idea that Allison was meeting with you guys all next year. You know, I don't know Janet. Janet's never reached out to me, and I've been the person at the Energy Committee for all this time.
Right.
I think that I know for a fact that Janet and I both have talked about this, is that it's absolutely essential that everybody know what's going on all the
So she
time.
needs to come to an official meeting, be on the agenda
Okay.
for a meeting.
Could we get her on the next agenda? Can you make that happen? No, the agenda for the select board.
What's her what's her contact information?
Janet dot.
Hold on.
I can send you her email if
Do
you
you
want.
do that?
Yes.
Yeah, just send it to me, because I should talk to her about.
I think that would be essential, because really as I see it, the main goal of this project is to, at the end of the project, that it's a seamless project that is both watershed and the select board, and everybody knows exactly what the work everybody knows what the work product is. This is the goal. The goal is to set goals.
If she comes to the select board meeting, the 5 of us will be there, Audra will be there, Jeremy
Yeah,
will be.
that's very efficient, very efficient.
So as the chair of the select board, of the Energy Committee, I'd be happy to send her an email asking her if it's all right with her to come to the January 21st select board meeting. Is that all right?
Well, I was going to do it.
Yeah.
Do you want to do it?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Because I know her. Okay.
And I just sent you her email.
Okay.
Because I think the worst possible scenario is if not everybody knows everybody needs to, at the outset, now, everybody needs to like, oh, okay, that's what we're doing? Great, let's do it.
Yes, you see, I mean, you say we have this expertise. I mean, all I know that you're doing is picking two dates and setting two numbers, which is a decrease in emissions. That's all. I mean, I don't know what else you're doing. It's interesting. I think, how.
So that's what we need.
don't
We need to know more.
Details of what you're attacking and how it
Yeah.
would be
So to
good
start with the select board.
do.
But that, you know, need
Definitely, and that would be the
more,
purpose
nuts
of,
and boltsy stuff from us.
yes, that would be the purpose of having those regular meetings, to make sure that everyone is clear on what we're doing and to make sure that everyone is on board with the commitments we come up with.
Right.
And the nice thing about starting that process at the select board is all of that, like this meeting, is recorded, so we can all watch it at our leisure and keep up to date. And I don't know if there's any forum for doing that for any of the other meetings that you're going to be having, but that would be phenomenal, because it would allow us all to be a fly on the wall, because we all are not likely to be able to make each and every meeting
But
that you're having.
one thing that I think is absolutely essential is to preload that meeting with individual meetings with each select board member in advance, so that there's no surprises. I think that's really important.
What would be the big surprise? Why can't you present, why can't they present what they're doing and
It's
what-
never
how they
good to
wanna
be,
approach it?
I mean, because this is liable to be, a fairly, for lack of a better word, what's the word? I'm going to have to pick really carefully the word I'm looking for, but this will be a consequential, like, if we do what the global compact of mayors says we're supposed to do, basically what we're doing is adopting reduction targets, substantial reduction targets, which are going to mean life in Camden is going to change radically to accomplish those goals. So this is not, oh, let's just window dress and say, sure, let's all, yeah, we want to do better. These goals are going to be, they're going to be binding as to us in the sense that we've made them. And so I think that if I'm a select board member, I'm gulping, thinking, wow, what is, I'm starting the town on a path that I know it needs to go, but this is consequential. We're going to need to build a lot of support for this in the community. And so I would want to know well in advance of any public meeting, what does this entail? What did we get ourselves into? Because I'm sure that the members of the select board don't yet realize what this means in terms of the role they're going to play in this. And so if I was a select board member, I'd want to know way before the public meeting. I'd want to have been briefed.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the danger is being blindsided
engine.
by how large our ambitions are, and they need to be. It's definitely, it's not going to be like a casual kind of recommendation. It's going to be some big stuff. So,
What keeps cropping up in my mind is that what we're asking the town and people to do is to rethink their use of energy, and it's the kind of behavior change that happens very naturally when there is an increased monetary cost to the resource. Take fuels. When the price of gas goes up, people start buying small cars. When the price of gas goes down, people go back to their SUVs and their big pickup trucks and their Ford 250s. I quite impacted by a very simple comment from a visitor from Germany who said, sitting in my home, she said, "Can you please tell me, like, what do you pay for electricity?" And so I went and got our electricity bill, and he said, "Oh, well, what do you think he meant by that?" He meant we're paying 10% what the Europeans pay for electricity.
Sure.
And this explained in one electrical bill, explained everything about why in Europe they turn off those lights, they use motion activated lights, they put their hotel card key into the slot and that turns on the lights, and everything that they do relates to what they actually financially pay for the energy. What we're asking is for that mental shift, hopefully with less payment, but possibly with some payment that may be substantial. But that's the reality.
Right, so
It's sort of a voluntary shift without being forced into it by our pocketbooks. That's kind of where we're going, is actually shifting to that higher cost voluntarily. Very hard to get people to think that way without being forced.
Right, so that's why I think lots and lots of preparation and dialogue and understanding and making sure everybody's where, you know, what are each member of the select board liable to be able to, you know, how brave are they willing to be? And you better find that out early on.
Well, how do you propose communicating all this outside and before a meeting 2 weeks from today of the select board?
Well, I'm going to meet with Janet. I'll discuss it with her. I can start meeting with select board members.
Was there, when all of this began back in the old,
There's only 4 members.
whatever,
We've already got one.
was there a conversation with the select board? And I know there's.
Yeah, the select board
changes,
voted.
But about how radical the shifts may be in certain areas so that, or were they just thinking words are not, you know, these are comfortable words. They're not thinking of closing Main Street and rerouting, you know, all traffic.
I think it's unclear, for me at least, how much deep understanding, you know, there was. I suspect that when you're staring down the barrel of the changes that will be, you know, that will be required, it's likely to be a surprise to, I think, a lot of people. And as Anita has said, change is difficult. You know, it's one thing, you know, we've taken this on, and as Pete said, as much as we're committed to the commitment that we've made, you know, to follow this through, and we can do it sensibly, but I think it's much more likely that people haven't yet grasped the full seriousness or the extent to which this commitment, honoring this commitment, is going to change their lives. I think there's great potential because we come out of it on the other end, you know, very sustainable as a community that we haven't been, and we are a shining example as we were just signing on to the covenant as the first municipality in the town. But it means it's deep and radical change.
So there should be an easy one, right? Of the people in the room, what are the 3 most significant changes for this community that you think this project will identify?
That's what the project is for.
Do you have anything in conceptual, you know, there wasn't.
We hadn't preloaded it.
Probably.
No, so we just, when we went before the select board to get the select board to sign on, what we did was we said, here's the process. It's a 3-year process. The first year will be basically an inventory of our energy use. The second year will be the vulnerability study. Where are we likely to be vulnerable? And the third year will be what goals will we adopt? And I think that, and I'm pretty sure that the select board was somewhat hesitant to adopt the targets although one of the ways that the select board finally did adopt it was we had an awful lot of teenagers in here. And one of the things that we said was, well, we are willing to put in the time and energy right now to start this, do these reports for you. You can't delay, though, because we're going to start next week.
Let me ask
Yeah.
something that might
We need
help.
to- we need to-
How is this, so we set these goals. How is, Janet Mills has proposed goals for the state, 100% by 2045. Okay, are we what's the difference? I mean, are we?
I think it's a
how can
belt
we
and
tell the
suspenders.
world that there is a difference, if indeed there is.
I think it's belt
Or
and
is it the same
suspenders.
thing?
It's belt and suspenders. In other words, there'll be state pressure and there'll be local pressure. There'll be state, that hopefully they'll figure out how to align some of these, like proposing to align the goals with the state will be part of it, I'm sure.
Yes, I mean, one of the main purposes of the Mills administration passing those bills was to put pressure on small municipalities to begin the process. There's no way that the state can reduce the carbon footprint of every individual person in Camden by 100%.
We need to
That's
work at a
our-
local level to help
That's our
effectuate those
responsibility.
goals. Basically, we're working hand in hand with the state. We're out ahead of it a little bit.
So you're
But-
not setting goals only, you are outlining paths to those goals. Yes.
To some extent, yes. I think that the goals part of it is going to be a lot more complicated than expected. Some of it will probably be outlining pathways to get there, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of looking at what is possible in the next 8 to 10 years in Camden. But again, that's something that I think having Janet to outline would be very helpful to understand what the report is going to look like.
Great, yeah, fantastic. I'd like to just report on something else before we finish up, because we're almost at 7 o'clock and we'd like to finish by then. Is there anything else that you'd like to address before we move off of this topic? Okay.
I would just ask as an action, I mean, are we going to try to do anything
Okay,
other than just Mark is going to try to line up Janet to go to the select board?
Mark is going to talk to Janet about going
By
to
the way,
select board. I will,
What email did you send? I did not get the information yet that you sent.
Oh, okay. I will try again, see what happens. Oh,
he
I
wants
can
to
do
know what
offline.
email you used.
I will.
What
try again.
address? So I will talk with Janet and meet with her and see what is she wants to, and then, and let you, yeah, I'm not going to be probably talking to her until Wednesday, though.
Okay.
So you can go ahead and call her if you want. But I'll also try to meet up with the other 4 select board members, and
How do
once
you
I,
spell her last name?
MCMAHON.
One at a time?
MCMAHON.
Got it.
okay. All right, so then I'd like to move on to Efficiency Camden. Jeremy Martin is continuing to work on trying to flesh out a program that Camden would have that would piggyback on the Efficiency Maine program. Efficiency Maine, you apply to Efficiency Maine for a rebate on certain items, and there's other ways that they can help rebate the cost of insulating your house or whatever else. In fact, I'm saving, on the house project I'm doing, I'm saving $3,000, I think, on insulation. Something like that, right, Brian? Brian's doing it for me. So Efficiency Maine is helping with that. So the town trust funds can be used. So the beauty of this is that we have trust funds as a town that have been designated for the low-income people to help in various ways. has to fulfill certain criteria. If somebody of low income is not able to pay their utility bill, the town trust fund can be applied to help with that. And there are a number of ways. There are actually 4 or 5 different trust funds, and they each have their own particular requirements. The way that someone who needs financial help can go to the town office, to the town manager's office, and talk to Janice, the town manager's assistant, to get help. Well, these funds are actually rather substantial. They've grown and they've been underutilized. So the town is looking for a way that fit the criteria where these funds can be used to help more people, and in particular to help in the efficiency realm. So if someone applies for and receives efficiency main rebates, then they could apply for efficiency Camden rebates, in essence doubling their money back. But this would only apply to those that qualify. And Jeremy and Audra and the trust committee, the committee that oversees the trust funds, are determining what qualify would mean in terms of income and property values. Where they need help is in organizing the program and getting the word out. So this is where we would launch into sort of PR mode and trying to help people know about the program. As it turns out, as I mentioned before, the trust funds are underutilized, and that's because not very many people know they exist and that they could apply. Rockland had a very successful program that was pushed by a committee of sorts, and the committee was instrumental in that program being so successful. So they're really hoping that our committee could help in this regard.
So that would then, I would assume that they would have something fully formed before they asked for PR.
Yes, it's not ready yet.
Right, so
Not ready yet.
standing by for after it's ready.
Stand by.
Got it.
Right, thank you. Also, Jeremy has reached out to Rich Roughgarden regarding developing the actual RFP for solar. So the town is going to put out an RFP for solar, additional solar capability or generation on behalf of the town. We don't know what shape that will take, but they are working on an RFP, and I think that part of the RFP is asking the entity to come up with suggestions.
Just to find out what's out there, what possibilities there are.
They might say, well, we could buy into this, or, well, we could build this, or
So it's truly an RFP, not an RFQ.
Proposals.
Yeah, so
a
good.
request for
See what's out
proposals.
there.
That's what the RFP is, yeah, for solar. Yeah. So Jeremy says his hope is that he can get an RFP created within a couple of weeks. And once they have it, they'll send it out. And he wanted to mention that he has taken 2 phone calls from solar installers since an article in the paper was published about this. So that's the status from Jeremy. He'll fill us in as they progress. And he's hoping that Brian and I can meet with Jeremy either late this week or early next week to discuss the Efficiency Camden program.
It's perfect.
Can I ask, I don't want to belabor something that we've kind of been over before, but at the select board meeting, there was mention of wind as another potential RFP.
Right.
Is that something that we
I would say that is,
lower priority and we work?
given the history, and you heard the principal opponent to Ragged Mountain Wind.
Sure.
That was, I think, her way of saying, I'm still here, I'm still going to be in a vocal opposition. And so, honestly, from a perspective of best use of energy, as in human resource energy, I think it's premature.
It's later on, perhaps, right, I guess, but
Yeah.
that's fine.
I appreciate that the way,
I know Dory.
I don't think it's appropriate for one person to hold it over the entire town. So,
It's not one person. I've gotten calls from a whole lot of people.
right,
There's a
but,
suggestion-
She just, I would argue that she's just the voice for
I
the
think she
opposition.
presented it very politely.
Yeah.
Just in defense of that, I'm not, I think everyone's views deserve, every community member deserves to be heard, and
agree.
it's a diverse community in
Sarah?
all respects, but if there was interest in comparing the pros and cons of wind versus solar in our community with all of its interests,
Right.
I wasn't sure where we would plug that work in, but it sounds like maybe we do this solar RFP because we're already down that road, and unless someone says that the
Well, it's likely to be, it's likely to be shorter term and cheaper to do solar at this point.
Yeah.
And because we did do some feasibility studies in the last go around, and there are some massive hurdles that, we were scratching our heads how you would go about. And I think actually the opposition was way premature. That unfortunately it would have been nice for the opposition to say, "Hey, show us what you got," and then we'll be happy to discuss why that's not appropriate or what. But we didn't get that far. And again, just looking at the preliminary hurdles to putting wind on the top of Ragged, those hurdles were big, even without the opposition.
Okay. I was just thinking,
So-
there is another couple of hilltops around here that might catch some wind, right? Unless there's something unique about.
Bob mentioned offshore as well, as something that we could consider.
Again, I don't know if.
We never got to offshore because that wasn't technically feasible back then.
Yeah, I mean, offshore is a very seldom, it's really new technology. So I'd say if we're, there's nowhere in Maine that is harnessing offshore wind. So if we want to focus on one area of energy, I'd say let's leave offshore for the next
Yeah.
necessary
It would be a big
project.
project we'd have to buy into. It wouldn't be some little.
Yeah, and that's the other thing about wind is the economies of scale. Like really, it doesn't make sense until you would, if you did put turbines on top of Ragged Mountain, you'd want to put probably, I think we looked at 9 turbines, and which would basically provide energy for the entire mid-coast.
Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you. I will go ahead and we need to set up a meeting with Jeremy. I need to know when you're available, Brian, so that we can figure that out.
Don't forget your crowdsourcing standards.
Crowdsourcing standards. So how, that's the passive house equivalent thereof for what kind of a standard do we want to set for the new buildings? And trying to figure out what's out there and what we can draw from.
Oh, what you're saying is, don't forget
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we are saying that you asked us to send you information.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Move to adjourn.
We could even.
Can I ask one
Waiting for
more
that
question?
light to go
I'm
on.
sorry. This matrix that you were talking, maybe Anna and I would contribute.
Yeah.
What is the specific question that we would hope?
Which of the 5, how would you choose between the 5 options that Audra presented in her report for?
Locations?
It was,
She actually only did 3.
no, I think there are 5.
Said there were 5, but there were only 3 I could figure out.
Can someone forward that report to me and I can look at that and?
Shh.
Flawless, or?
Yeah, is Audra's report on the website, do you know? It would be in the select board package, which is available on the website.
From,
Camden,
Where?
yeah.
Because I tried to find it on the website, actually.
If you go to the select, go to the select board, and then there'll be, minutes or whatever, and there'll always be a select board package
That's a PDF.
that they send out in advance. That's
So it's in there.
publicly available.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
I'll look for
I'll
it
take
that
a
way.
look at that.
I'll try.
Thank you very much.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we are adjourned officially, 7:05. Thank you.